Thank you. The reason that I created this podcast is because I want to feel better. So many of the right-wing talk show hosts that I've listened to over the years make me feel worse, more anxious, more fearful, angrier. And I want to feel better, and I want the people who listen to my podcast to feel better after having listened to it than they did at the beginning.
It's tough to find a woman, Johnny. It's tough, you know?
Yeah.
Gotta get a woman you can trust. Trust is the whole thing.
You betcha.
I was going one girl for a while. I trusted her. She let me down.
Oh?
Now, what happened was, she ran away with my best friend.
Oh.
Now I got no dog.
Good morning. It's Monday, Medal of Honor Monday, April the 22nd, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have the patriotic shorts, motivation, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, the 33 strategies of war, and the Medal of Honor. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
God save our 13 states. Long live United States. God save our states. Make us victorious, happy and glorious. No tyrants over us. God save our states. We'll fear no tyrants not, nor stern oppressions run, till time's no more. May union bless our land, while we with heart and hand our mutual rights defend on our free shore. God save our 13 states. Long live United States. God save our states. Make us victorious, happy and glorious. No tyrants over us. God save our states.
Thank you. And now, a little bit of the Wild West.
Billy the Kid was a legendary gunslinger and outlaw of the American Old West. Born in 1859, his life was marked by crimes and adventures. At the age of 21, he became one of the most wanted gunmen in New Mexico, with a reputation for his deadly accuracy. Throughout his criminal career, Billy the Kid was believed to have been responsible for the deaths of at least 8 men. In 1881, Billy was captured and sentenced to death. However, he escaped from jail and became a Wild West legend. His life came to a tragic end at the age of 21 when he was shot and killed by a sheriff. Although he lived a short life, Billy the Kid remains an iconic figure in American history and one of the most famous personalities of the Old West.
Wild West saloons were more than whiskey-soaked dens of debauchery. They were the vibrant, pulsating hearts of frontier towns, outnumbering churches and hospitals, where locals, settlers, and travelers congregated for trade, lodging, and community gatherings. Their clientele comprised hard-working folks, cowboys, ranchers, soldiers, laborers, seeking camaraderie and relaxation. Loon girls wooed customers, earning from cocktail sales, while the dangerous concoctions on tap were as wild as the frontier itself. Saloons ultimately faced resistance from reform movements, setting the stage for prohibition. Here are some crazy history facts about the Wild West. Contrary to what you might see in typical Hollywood westerns, an estimated 1 in 4 cowboys was black. When American ranchers moved to Texas, they brought slaves along, and during the Civil War, they needed them to look after their herds while they were away fighting. After slavery was abolished, these formerly enslaved cowhands became highly sought after for their skills. One of the few recorded instances of a classic fast-draw duel took place on the 21st of July, 1865 in Springfield, Missouri, between Wild Bill Hickok and the gambler Davis Tutt. The outlaw Jesse James was the son of Robert James, a Baptist minister. The Pony Express Postal Service only operated for 18 months, between April 1860 and October 1861 because of the arrival of the telegraph.
Have you heard of Wild Bill Hickok? This tough guy was a true legend of the Wild West. He was known for his incredible skills with a gun. He won 6 shootouts without a scratch. People respected him deeply, and his word was law. Even as a young boy, Wild Bill fought for what was right. He helped his dad hide runaway slaves seeking freedom. Later, he joined the fight against slavery. Danger seemed to follow Wild Bill. He wrestled a bear to the ground with his bare hands, and once took down 3 robbers in a single fight. One time, a gambler stole Wild Bill's watch and threatened to show everyone if he didn't get paid. In a showdown the next day, Wild Bill proved who was faster with a gun. After the war, Wild Bill became a lawman, cleaning up towns, but tragedy struck when, in a shootout, he accidentally shot his own deputy. From then on, Wild Bill avoided guns, sadly, that didn't protect him forever. During a poker game, he was shot in the back by a sneaky gambler. Wild Bill died holding a special hand of cards, the dead man's hand. That's remembered to this day.
Was it tougher or easier to enforce law in your days?
Much tougher.
Well, because there was more crime?
No, there was lesser crime. The people were more honest. You could leave a poke of gold in your home and leave the door wide open. It was as safe as in a bank vault.
Well, then why was the job tougher?
Well, because you were the arresting officer. You took every responsibility on yourself. You were arresting officer, detective, squad car, jailer, the whole thing wrapped up in one.
All one job.
The Wild West saw multiple gold rushes, notably the California Gold Rush of 1848, shaping its economy and culture. Cowboys weren't just white Americans. They included African Americans, Mexican vaqueros, and Native Americans. Native American tribes inhabited the region, leading to frequent conflicts with settlers. Outlaws like Billy the Kid and lawmen like Wyatt Earp became legendary figures of the era. Railroads played a crucial role in the region's development, connecting distant towns and cities. Buffalo Bill Cody's Wild West shows popularized the frontier lifestyle globally. Abandoned mining towns left behind ghost towns when the gold or silver ran out. Women of the West, such as Calamity Jane and Annie Oakley, challenged traditional gender roles, contributing significantly to the region's history.
Crazy cool facts about the Wild West. Yeehaw. The term cowboy is believed to have originated in the 18th century from the Spanish word vaquero, which means cattle driver. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, some western towns were known as sundown towns because people of color were not allowed in town after sunset. Cowboys had their own unique lingo, with terms like buckaroo for a young cowboy and doggy for a motherless calf. They enjoyed a food called caviar of the prairies, which was actually dried or roasted ants. It provided protein and was readily available. But personally, I think eating ants would make me go loopy and start thinking about it.
And that was the Wild West. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, the Patriotic Shorts.
When I got into Vietnam, the first day of September 1968, but who's counting, we get off the plane, and in about 20 minutes, we got rockets that are coming in. And everybody's jumping in this bunker, and I remember looking at the end of the bunker, and there's a young Marine there, and he's doing the sign of the cross. And I'm thinking to myself, my God, I've been here 20 minutes, And I'm supposed to, this is happening, and I'm supposed to be here 13 months. Woo! So that was kind of my hello, welcome to Good Morning Vietnam.
Only one P-51 Mustang ever attempted to land on a World War II aircraft carrier. The airframe of Army Air Corps serial number 44-14017 was specially strengthened for a secret test mission. And on November 15th, 1944, Lieutenant Robert Elder successfully landed this P-51D not once, but multiple times on the aircraft carrier USS Shangri-La CV-38. The fighter plane, referred to unofficially by some as the P-51 Seahorse, was fitted with an arresting hook attached to a reinforced bulkhead behind the tailwheel. The original tires were replaced with special high-pressure tires. A constant curved approach was required due to reduced visibility over the nose, and landing approaches were made at 85 miles per hour. But if the landing attempts were successful, why was this top-secret program scrapped? Click on the link in the description of this video for additional information.
I told my men, come on, let's go. And someone further in the background, another enemy bad guy, was standing up, telling my men to come on. I got shot in the jaw, went in my left side and out underneath my right jaw. And Sergeant Tulliver came up and patched me up, and a couple of my men took me back to the command post.
So the German military had a very elite parachute corps that was sort of a shock troop. They had to get in and take objectives. Now, the bolt-action rifle, while it was still used by the paratroops, the FG-42 gave them a semi-automatic and a full automatic capability to suppress fire and overrun targets with massed fire.
That had the capability of a Mauser from a caliber standpoint, and I believe full auto or automatic fire was the request of it too, but was contained and short enough that they could actually have them on when they parachute in. And that's where the FG-42 development began.
It took us about 2 days to get to Paris, which should have been just a matter of a few hours, but we had our fighter planes were covering the highways and that all the time. They wouldn't dare move during the day. They'd get shot up. Even at night, sometimes it didn't have the lights dimmed and that, they would get shot up. But anyway, they took us by these truck into Paris, and a German doctor operated on me and did a good job because, back surgery back then was pretty touchy. And so I came through it okay. And I still have some shrapnel in my back, but the doctors always said, leave it unless it bothers you because it's more dangerous of surgery than it would be without.
I remember one night I kept going out to the outpost, and when I got up there to it, poor guys, they were sleeping. I could hear them snoring just before I got to it. So I woke them up. I said, don't worry about it. Nobody else is going to know about it. But one of you stay away. Because the captain was called up and said, I can't get nobody. Find out why. So I did. Nobody never knew it. I wasn't about to tell them because I understand. If they were lucky, they was warm enough to sleep. I could not sleep nowhere because it's too cold. Turns out that was the coldest one in history over there.
I don't know if I can go on without her, he told his good friend Jimmy Stewart. I wish it had been me in that plane. It had been several weeks since the death of his wife, Carol Lombard, and Clark Gable remained listless, disconsolate. It's like a light has gone out in Clark, Stewart confided to concerned friends. I'm worried about him. In the summer of 1942, the 40-year-old Gable enlisted in the Army Air Force as a private. He passed officers candidate and aerial gunnery school and wrote a letter to President Roosevelt pleading for a combat assignment. Stay where you are, FDR telegrammed back. But Gable was persistent and was eventually assigned to the 351st Bomb Group to make a documentary film called Combat America. Stationed in England, Gable insisted on flying combat missions and even had a close encounter with anti-aircraft fire when his boot was hit with flak. I'd rather take my chance up there than go on without her down here, Clark Gable confessed. I don't expect to come back, and I don't want to come back.
Shotguns, World War I. When the Americans entered the war, they brought with them the combat shotgun. As a close-range weapon, it was highly effective for clearing a German assault on a trench or clearing German positions such as dugouts or buildings. The Winchester Model 1897 was a popular pump-action shotgun with American civilians and the military before the war, and it is said that General John Pershing was a big supporter of U.S. troops being issued with such shotguns in World War I because of their effectiveness during the Philippine insurrection. To suit its military role, a trench-grade version of the Model 1897 was designed based on what they had observed from the first 3 years of the war. The M1897 trench-grade shotgun featured a perforated steel heat shield over the barrel, which protected the soldier's hand from overheating, and a bayonet lug for an M1917 bayonet.
We were coming through a hedgerow. The growth was pretty thick at the top, and I had just got, maybe from here to that doorway, and a German popped up, and he had his gun in his hand, but he had got tangled in grapevines or something there. And again, my gun misfired. So I had to take him down, beat him to death with the butt of my gun. So it was that kind of fighting, very savage and, very gruesome in a way.
The moment you as a soldier start losing a battle, instead of in the West where you can retreat, you can surrender, and it's not dishonorable because you're going to live to fight another day. In Japan, you're a failure. And therefore, if you come home back as a failed soldier, you bring dishonor to yourself, your family, your locality, anyone you are associated with. In the West, it's all about liberties and my rights. In the East, it's about obligations to other people. So that's why it is so difficult for them to surrender. And when their soldiers are thinking about war, they're not thinking about grand strategy, they're thinking about operational success. However, by the time you get to the end of the war, they are so exhausted. Their economy is something like a tenth of our economy. They're importers of food and they're not getting that food. And finally, at the very end, you have Emperor Hirohito, who knew full well earlier, if he disagreed, that he would be assassinated. At the very end, when he decided he was about to get nuked, that's when he intervenes to break the deadlock at the cabinet meetings. And there are a variety of people at the very top who realize it's over.
In the teams, man, you're rep.
And that was the Patriotic Shorts. Back in a minute.
And I would ask him, at what point do you become stronger than your strongest excuse? Meaning, even when it's valid, you can use it, and it's probably wrong that it happened, but at what point do you become stronger than your strongest excuse? Because at a certain point, life is going to place everybody in a position to where you never know how strong you are until being strong is the only choice you have.
The fruit of everything good in life begins with a challenge. Everything is uphill that's worthwhile. And it's not going to come to you, and it's not going to fall in your lap, and it's not going to be something that, oh my God, it just was so simple. It's always going to be difficult. It's easier to go from failure to success than it is from excuses to success. The moment you make excuses for your life, you take the exit off of where you're trying to go. Because excuses give you a reason for not being exceptional. It gives you a reason for not showing up. It gives you a reason for not delivering the goods. It gives you a reason for not being the person that you wanted to be. Remember this, excuses always shrink your stature. Excuses are the quicksand in the land of the living. And the moment that you begin to excuse yourself and make it a lifestyle, you never can be a person of excellence, and you can never be a person of success.
Excuses sound best to the person that's making them up. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Get off the pity potty. Telling everybody your sad and sob stories, trying to get people to show up to your pity potties and your pity parades. If you ever see me in a Rolls Royce, a 6 or 7 star hotel, living my life to the fullest, don't get jealous of me, because I worked my ass off to get it. Nobody handed me nothing.
The chronic excuse maker. How do you stop making excuses? This is actually pretty simple. And I said it the other day, and you have to realize, you have to know, you have to accept that all your excuses are lies. They are lies, all of them. Think about the things that you tell yourself, the lies you use to rationalize taking the easy road. Taking the easy road and leaving discipline behind. Think about them. You don't have time. That's a lie. You don't have support. That's a lie. You don't have the equipment or the gear. Lies. You don't know the best way. Who cares? That's a lie. Or you're too old or you're too young. Of course you're too old or too young. Lie. And there's you're too busy. Sure you are. And the list goes on and on and on. And it doesn't stop if you don't make it stop. So recognize the excuses are not valid. They're trumped up. They're conjured up. They're fabricated. They're lies.
What's stopping you? Are you too tired? Didn't get enough sleep? Don't have enough energy? Don't have enough time? Is that what's stopping you right now? Don't have enough money? Is that the thing? Or is the thing that's stopping you, you?
Courage is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward in spite of it. I have to have the courage. And let me tell you something. Most Americans don't have this kind of courage. I have to have the courage to stop making excuses. Is this going to be the year you stop making excuses? Do you want to get well? Do you want to get well? Do you want your life to change? Do you want your finances to be different? Do you want your marriage to be different? Do you want to cure cancer? I can't. I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm too fat. I'm too thin. I can't. Right? I can't. I hear this all the time. All the reasons that you can't do something. Don't tell me you can't. Don't give me excuses. What's the reason you've given yourself why you can't be successful and you can't be better? Let me tell you something I've learned. It's way easier to blame someone else than to get honest with yourself. What's the reason? What excuse have you bought into? What excuse have you believed that's not allowing you to live the life God's called you to live? I gotta have the courage to stop making excuses.
This is your chance. This is your shot. This is your moment. This is your time. This is your place. This is your opportunity.
This is my time. This is my moment. Tomorrow. Ain't no such thing as tomorrow. We only got today. It's your dream. If you wanted to have it, get your butt up and make it happen. If you wanted to have it, rise and grind.
Do I just sit there and settle? No, I don't. I say enough's enough, man, and I'm going to make a change, and I'm going to keep going until I get it. You chase something that you believe you deserve until you get it. And it doesn't matter what happens to you. It doesn't matter how many times you've been fired. It doesn't matter how many people don't believe in you. You just go until you get it. That's the point. Are you tired yet? Some of you need to get tired. You need to be tired of what's going on in your life. Get tired of your habits. Get tired of the actions that you're putting in every day. You got to change, man, or nothing changes.
I woke up one day and stopped making excuses. I woke up one day and stopped playing the blame game. I woke up one day and looked at the man in the mirror and was like, yo, bro, what are you doing? Wake up. It's showtime. Let's go.
Wake your ass up. Awaken the beast inside. It's game on. It's go season. It's time for you to take advantage of the access and the resources that you have in your country and your community. You got a problem with your life. You got a problem with your environment. Do something about it. If you want it, go get it.
So, don't believe the lies, believe the truth. And the truth is, you have time. You have the skill. You have the knowledge and the support and the willpower and the discipline to get it done. So cast out the lies, burn them down, and listen to the truth. Then live the truth and go out and get it done.
And that was a little bit of motivation. Next up, the daily laws. Back in a minute.
April 21st. Be merciless with your enemies. The remnants of an enemy can become active like those of a disease or fire. Hence, these should be exterminated completely. One should never ignore an enemy, knowing him to be weak. He becomes dangerous in due course, like the spark of fire in a haystack. Cotilia, 3rd century BC. Crush the enemy is a key strategic tenet of Sun Tzu, the 4th century BC author of The Art of War. The idea is simple. Your enemies wish you ill. There is nothing they want more than to eliminate you. If, in your struggles with them, you stop halfway or even 3/4 of the way, out of mercy or hope of reconciliation, you only make them more determined, more embittered, and they will someday take revenge. They may act friendly for the time being, but this is only because you have defeated them. They have no choice but to bide their time. The solution? Have no mercy. Crush your enemies as totally as they would crush you. Ultimately, the only peace and security you can hope for from your enemies is their disappearance. It is not, of course, a question of murder. It is a question of banishment. Sufficiently weakened and then exiled from your court forever, your enemies are rendered harmless. And if they cannot be banished, at least understand that they are plotting against you and pay no heed to whatever friendliness they feign. Daily law. Judge your enemies carefully, looking at their past patterns. Sometimes it is best to convert them into an ally and neutralize them. But with others, it only pays to be merciless and crush them totally. The 48 Laws of Power, Law 15. Crush your enemy totally. Learn to keep people dependent on you. April 22nd. Sow the seeds of doubt. It is easier to cope with a bad conscience than with a bad reputation. Friedrich Nietzsche. Doubt is a powerful weapon. Once you let it out of the bag with insidious rumors, your opponents are in a horrible dilemma. On the one hand, they can deny the rumors, even prove that you have slandered them. But a layer of suspicion will remain. Why are they defending themselves so desperately? Maybe the rumor has some truth to it. If, on the other hand, they take the high road and ignore you, the doubts, unrefuted, will be even stronger. If done correctly, the sowing of rumors can so infuriate and unsettle your rivals that in defending themselves, they will make numerous mistakes. This is the perfect weapon for those who have no reputation of their own to work from. Daily law. Destroy your rivals with rumors. The 48 Laws of Power. Law 5. So much depends on reputation. Guard it with your life.
And that was the Daily Law for April 21 and April 22 from the Daily Laws by Robert Greene. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, a little bit of Bishop Barron.
What makes you happy is seeking, above all, God's will for you, which is righteousness, which is right order. Once you've found that, Jesus is implying, the other dimensions of your life will tend to fall into right harmony and order around it. Go back to the Beatitudes. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. And there's that same idea. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. So should I be seeking first food and drink and sex and shelter and comfort? No. Seek first the kingdom of God. Should I seek first even like intellectual attainment? No, that's fine. But seek first the kingdom of God. And then the rest will be given unto you. Your life will now find its proper harmony and order around that center.
Thank you. Now, Ayn Rand Thought of the Day. Quote, since men are neither omniscient nor infallible, they must be free to agree or disagree, to cooperate or to pursue their own independent course, each according to his own rational judgment. Freedom is the fundamental requirement of a man's mind, unquote. And that was the Ayn Rand Thought of the Day. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now we're picking up where we left off with the 33 strategies.
The battle began.
Of war.
At first, the Romans seemed to have the edge. The center of the Carthaginian line proved surprisingly weak and easily gave ground. The Romans attacked this center with force, hoping to break through and indeed pushing forward, when to their shock and horror, they looked behind them and saw the two outer ends of the Carthaginian lines moving around to encircle them. They were trapped in a lethal embrace. It was a slaughter. Cannae would go down in history as Rome's most devastating and humiliating defeat. The war with Hannibal would drag on for years. Carthage never sent him the reinforcements that might have turned the tide, and the much larger and more powerful Roman army was able to recover from its many defeats at his hands. But Hannibal had earned a terrifying reputation. Despite their superior numbers, the Romans became so frightened of Hannibal that they avoided battle with him like the plague. Interpretation. Hannibal must be considered the ancient master of the military art of the unorthodox. In attacking the Romans on their own soil, he never intended to take Rome itself. That would have been impossible. Its walls were high, its people fierce and united in their hatred of him, and his forces were small. Rather, Hannibal's goal was to wreak havoc on the Italian peninsula and to undermine Rome's alliances with neighboring city-states. Weakened at home, Rome would have to leave Carthage alone and put a stop to its imperial expansion. To sow this kind of chaos with the tiny army he had been able to bring over the Alps, Hannibal had to make his every action unexpected. A psychologist before his time, he understood that an enemy that is caught by surprise loses its discipline and sense of security. When chaos strikes those who are particularly rigid and orderly to begin with, such as the people and armies of Rome, it has double the destructive power. And surprise can never be mechanical, repetitive, or routine. That would be a contradiction in terms. Surprise takes constant adaptation, creativity, and a mischievous pleasure in playing the trickster. So Hannibal always took the route that Rome least expected him to take. The road through the Alps, for example, considered impassable to an army and therefore unguarded. Eventually, inevitably, the Romans caught on and began to expect him to take the least obvious route. At that point, it was the obvious that was unexpected, as at Alephi. In battle, Hannibal would fix the enemy's attention on a frontal assault, the ordinary, usual way armies fought at the time, then unleash the extraordinary in the form of elephants or a reserve force hidden to the enemy's rear. In his raids in the Roman countryside, he deliberately protected Fabius's property, creating the impression that the two men were in collusion and ultimately forcing the embarrassed leader to take action, an unorthodox use of politics and extra-military means in war. At Alephi, Hannibal had bundles of kindling tied to the horns of oxen, then lit them and sent the terrified bellowing animals up the slopes to the pass at night, creating an indecipherable image to the Roman sentries, literally in the dark, and a terrifying one. At Cannae, where the Romans were by this time expecting the unorthodox, Hannibal disguised his stratagem in broad daylight, lining up his army like any other army of the period. The Roman force was already impelled by the violence of the moment and the desire for revenge. He let them make quick progress through his deliberately weak center, where they became crowded together. Then the swift-moving outer wings of his line closed in and choked them.
On and on he went, each one of Hannibal's ingeniously unorthodox maneuvers flowering out of the other in a constant alternation between the uncanny and the banal, the hidden and the obvious. Adapting Hannibal's method to your own daily battles will bring you untold power. Using your knowledge of your enemy's psychology and way of thinking, you must calculate your opening moves to be what they least expect. The line of least expectation is the line of least resistance. People cannot defend themselves against what they cannot foresee. With less resistance in your path, the progress you make will inflate their impression of your power. Hannibal's small army seemed to the Romans much larger than it really was. Once they come to expect some extraordinary maneuver on your part, hit them with the ordinary. Establish a reputation for the unconventional, and you set your opponents on their heels. Knowing to anticipate the unexpected is not the same thing as knowing what the unexpected will be. Before long, your opponents will give way to your reputation alone. 2. In 1962, Sonny Liston became the heavyweight boxing champion of the world by defeating Floyd Patterson. Shortly afterward, he turned up to watch a young hotshot on the scene, Cassius Clay, take on and beat rather decisively the veteran Archie Moore. After the fight, Liston paid a visit to Clay's dressing room. He put his arm around the boy's shoulder. At 20, Clay was 10 years younger than Liston, and told him, "Take care, kid. I'm going to need you, but I'm going to have to beat you like I'm your daddy." Liston was the biggest, baddest fighter in the world, and to those who understood the sport, he seemed invincible. But Liston recognized Clay as a boxer just crazy enough to want to fight him down the road. It was best to instill a touch of fear in him now. The fear did not take. As Liston had guessed he would, Clay soon began to clamor for a fight with the champion and to brag to one and all that he would beat him in 8 rounds. On television and radio shows, he taunted the older boxer. Maybe it was Liston who was afraid to take on Cassius Clay. Liston tried to ignore the upstart. "If they ever make the fight," he said, "I'll be locked up for murder." He considered Clay too pretty, even effeminate, to be a heavyweight champion. Time passed, and Clay's antics provoked a desire for the fight in the public. Most people wanted to see Liston beat the daylights out of Clay and shut him up. Late in 1963, the two men met to sign on for a championship fight in Miami Beach the following February. Afterward, Clay told reporters, "I'm not afraid of Liston. He's an old man. I'll give him talking lessons and boxing lessons. What he needs most is falling down lessons." As the fight grew closer, Clay's rhetoric became still more insulting and shrill. Of the sports writers polled on the upcoming fight, most of them predicted that Clay would not be able to walk on his own after it was over. Some worried that he would be permanently injured. "I guess it's quite hard to tell Clay not to fight this monster now," said the boxer Rocky Marciano, "but I'm sure he'll be more receptive after he's been there with Liston." What worried the experts most of all was Cassius Clay's unusual fighting style. He was not the typical heavyweight bruiser. He would dance in place with his hands down at his side. He rarely put his full body into his punches, instead hitting just from the arms. His head was constantly moving, as if he wanted to keep his pretty face unscathed. He was reluctant to go inside, to brawl and pummel the body, the usual way to wear down a heavyweight. Instead, Clay preferred to dance and shuffle, as if his fights were ballet, not boxing. He was too small to be a heavyweight, lacked the requisite killer instinct. The press critique ran on. At the weigh-in on the morning of the bout, everyone was waiting for Clay's usual pre-fight antics. He exceeded their expectations. When Liston got off the scales, Clay began to shout at him, "Hey, sucker, you're a chump. You've been tricked, chump. You are too ugly. I'm going to whoop you so bad." Clay jumped and screamed, his whole body shaking, his eyes popping, his voice quivering. He seemed possessed. Was he afraid or downright crazy? For Liston, this was quite simply the last straw. He wanted to kill Clay and shut the challenger up for good. As they stood in the ring before the opening bell, Liston tried to stare down Clay as he had stared down others, giving him the evil eye. But unlike other boxers, Clay stared back. Bobbing up and down in place, he repeated, "Now I've got you, chump." The fight began, and Liston charged forward at his prey, throwing a long left jab that missed by a mile. He kept coming, a look of intense anger on his face, but Clay shuffled back from each punch, even taunting Liston at one point by lowering his hands. He seemed able to anticipate Liston's every move, and he returned Liston's stare. Even after the round ended and both men were in their corners, his eyes never left his opponents. The second round was more of the same, except that Liston, instead of looking murderous, began to look frustrated. The pace was far faster than in any of his earlier fights, and Clay's head kept bobbing and orbiting in disturbing patterns. Liston would move in to strike his chin, only to miss, or find Clay hitting Liston's chin instead, with a lightning-quick jab that made him wobble on his feet. At the end of the third round, a flurry of punches came out of nowhere and opened a deep gash under Liston's left eye. Now Clay was the aggressor, and Liston was fighting to survive. In the sixth round, he began taking punches from all angles, opening more wounds and making Liston look weak and sad. When the bell for the seventh round rang, the mighty Liston just sat on his stool and stared. He refused to get up. The fight was over. The boxing world was stunned. Was it a fluke? Or, since Liston had seemed to fight as if under some spell, his punches missing, his movements tired and listless, had he just had an off night? The world would have to wait some 15 months to find out, until the two boxers' rematch in Lewiston, Maine, in May 1965. Consumed with a hunger for revenge, Liston trained like a demon for this second fight. In the opening round, he went on the attack, but he seemed wary. He followed Clay, or rather Muhammad Ali as he was now known, around the ring, trying to reach him with jabs. One of these jabs finally grazed Ali's face as he stepped back, but in a move so fast that few in the audience even saw it, Ali countered with a hard right that sent Liston to the canvas. He lay there for a while, then staggered to his feet, but too late. He had been down for more than 10 seconds, and the referee called the fight.
And that was the 33 Strategies of War, Chapter 24, Take the Line of Least Expectation. Back in a minute. Thank you. If you are a Democrat, you should be voting Republican because the Republican Party is the true party of civil rights. It always has been. It was a party of civil rights in the Civil War, and right after the Civil War, it is the party that came up with the first three civil rights bills, all that were killed by Democrats, by the way. So it's the Republican Party that has always been about civil rights. So if you as a Democrat are interested in civil rights, you need to vote Republican and become a Republican. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Stuart Varney's My Take.
The Supreme Court today takes up this issue. All those homeless encampments disfiguring big cities. The famously liberal Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has ruled that arresting and moving the homeless is cruel and unusual punishment. That ruling, going back years, created a constitutional right to camp out on public land. Hopefully, the justices will reverse course because giving carte blanche to the homeless has been a disaster. The town of Grants Pass, Oregon, tried to fine homeless people for camping in public parks. Activists went to court, arguing that homelessness is involuntary. In other words, they had no choice. So you can't punish them. Think this through, please. What other forms of involuntary behavior are protected? Kleptomaniacs who feel compelled to steal, perhaps? Oral arguments today in the Supreme Court. A ruling could come down in June. How convenient for California Governor Gavin Newsom. If the justices end the ban on clearing out those encampments, Newsom can say his state, California, can now deal with the problem. The Ninth Circuit tied his hands, but the Supremes have set him free. He wants to be president, and dealing with the homeless would make him look good. Not going to be easy, rousting out the drugs, the crime, and the mental illness, but if the constitutional right to screw up vast sections of our cities is reversed, there's a chance to turn the tide. Second hour of Varney, just getting started.
So, three things here. Number one is about the news departments and nonprofit news now. Stuart Varney is making money and creating profits for his company based on the misery of the so-called homeless people. That brings me to the second issue, which is there are no homeless people other than those that are on the streets because of natural disasters, etc. The people that we see living on bridges and whatnot, they are self-destructive. And that brings me to two other issues. One of them is private property. The left wants to destroy private property. So this is one of their ways of doing it, is by ignoring property rights and creating fictional rights for people that are squatting and trespassing. The third one is determinism. That all of this is based on the idea, and you heard Varney say it, that people have no free will, that they do what they do because they're forced to by powers beyond their control. All of this is just BS, especially determinism. And when somebody's making to you the deterministic argument, indicating to you that nobody has control over what they do, you tell them determinism is dead. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, World War II heroes, Medal of Honor recipients in World War II and their heroic stories.
Chapter 11. First Lieutenant Orville Emil Block. It is not only in movies where Army men can single-handedly infiltrate enemy lines and defeat them. With the strength and bravery of an entire army condensed within a single man, First Lieutenant Orville Emil Block was able to capture a total of 19 soldiers and eliminate 5 German machine gun nests as well during an operation in Firenzuola, Italy. Born to Emil and Ottilie Block on February 10, 1915, he was once a resident of Big Falls, Wisconsin. Their family eventually moved to Steele, North Dakota, where Block earned a living as a meat dealer. With his height at only 5 feet 3 inches, Block was often bullied and was even given the nickname Weenie. Despite being small for his age, he was able to excel in high school football and basketball. In 1941, he graduated from North Dakota Agricultural College, currently known as North Dakota State University, with a degree of Bachelor of Science in Agricultural Economics. During that time, Block yearned to be a part of the U.S. military. Japanese forces had just bombed Pearl Harbor, and this motivated him to sign up for officer training. He tried joining the Army, the Marines, and the Navy, but was rejected by all since he was too short. Being turned down still did not stop Block from fulfilling his dream of serving in the American Armed Forces. He traveled to Fort Snelling in Minnesota to pursue a warrant training program. On February 22, 1942, he was successfully enlisted as a private. Excelling with his leadership abilities, Block's superiors waived the height requirement and sent him for further training to the Officers Candidate School at Fort Benning. Upon completion of the program in 1943, Block was then given the rank of second lieutenant as a member of Company E of the 338th Infantry in the 85th Infantry Division, also known as the Custer Division. Together with his unit, he trained in Louisiana, California, and Fort Dix, New Jersey, before being deployed to Northwest Africa in December. He was then promoted to first lieutenant during their overseas operation. In 1944, their division was sent to Naples, Italy, tasked to push back German lines toward the north of Po River in northern Italy. After attaining their objective through fierce battles, they moved towards Rome with the enemy's Apennine mountain defenses known as the Gothic Line. The Gothic Line was one of the German forces' main defensive lines situated in northern Italy. Reinforced by 2,376 machine gun nests, 479 gun positions, barbed wire, concrete bunkers, and anti-tank ditches, the area was a favorable battleground for the Germans. In order to break through the Gothic Line, Bloch's division needed to capture the area of Firenzuola. They launched an attack on September 21st, 1944, against the German camps within it. In an encounter with enemy troops, Bloch gathered 3 volunteer soldiers to accompany him in approaching the German lines protected by 5 machine gun nests. Undetected, they took cover near a big rock just behind the heavily guarded area. With his 3 subordinates on the lookout, Bloch opted to leave them within the safety of their hiding place and charged towards the first machine gun nest. He stunned all 5 members of the German unit as he fired furiously at them, displaced their guns, and captured them. Continuing his streak of offensive moves, Bloch held a grenade in his hands and rushed under fire toward the second machine gun nest 15 yards away as his target. Upon closing their gap to within 20 feet, he threw the grenade that left 1 gunner wounded and 2 retreating to an abandoned house for cover. Before pursuing the enemies who fled from his attacks, Bloch summoned one of his men to accompany him. They positioned themselves on the opposite end of the house where they encountered another machine gun nest composed of 5 German soldiers. The duo opened fire on the enemies, forcing them to abandon their equipment and to withdraw towards the same house the second machine gun crew hid in. Bloch immediately rushed and broke open the door where he dodged the automatic small arms fire of the German soldiers hiding. Unassisted, he fired his carbine from his hip and was able to neutralize the attacks of the enemy. Bloch captured the 7 gunners, severely wounding 3 of them. Soon after, he reunited with his men and advanced further. Near the next building, they discovered another machine gun nest with 6 men on guard. They were spotted in an instant, but Bloch charged without hesitation towards the enemies. He avoided the wildly fired bullets toward his direction, pursuing the Germans as they retreated back to a nearby house. Cornering the gunners, Bloch captured all 6 and wounded 2 of them. 5 months after contributing to the American operation in the Gothic Line, Bloch's heroic actions earned him the Medal of Honor on February 10, 1945. He continued serving in the U.S. Army, earning the rank of captain. Bloch was then deployed to the Far East Command headquarters in Tokyo, eventually being promoted to major. He was also assigned to various American posts after serving as a staff officer during the Korean conflict in 1951. He was sent to the 3rd Army headquarters in Atlanta in 1953, was assigned to the Caribbean Command in the Panama Canal Zone, and was appointed as the Army advisor to the 41st Infantry Division of the Washington National Guard. While performing the last mentioned duty, he was further promoted to lieutenant colonel. Bloch was also awarded and recognized for his military contributions in his later career. He was included in the Hall of Fame at the Infantry Officers Candidate School in Fort Benning during the year 1959. In 1961, he excelled as a senior advisor of the U.S. Army's G3 combat operations and was awarded for his contributions. Furthermore, he assumed the position of vice presidency for the Congressional Medal of Honor Society of America in 1962. In 1965, Bloch also received the Alumni Achievement Award from his alma mater, North Dakota State University. Due to his declining health condition, Bloch was not deployed to fight in the Vietnam War. Before retiring from the U.S. Army in 1970, he was promoted to colonel. After rendering 28 years of service as a military man, Bloch established an apple orchard business in Manson. Upon discovering that one of the schools in his community started to be financially stable, he himself constantly delivered apples for them as aid. It wasn't long until his physical well-being collapsed. Bloch died from a heart attack on May 28, 1983, and was laid to rest in Evergreen Washelli Memorial Park in Seattle, Washington.
And that was World War II heroes, Medal of Honor recipients, and their heroic stories of bravery. Back in a minute. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that you are not neutral and that the government has no rights.